So we're in the middle of Zayin. V'yesh l'ha'yosef. No, we didn't get to there. We're up to, we did? Okay, let's go back. So it's about a third down, beginning of the line. Yeah? I think we'll have the same text. We're all using the same. Yeah. He's Zayin. The same layout, I mean. So Tzivus Havaya is Bizman Moishe, and Havaya Tzvokis is B'mei HaNeviim. Right? Shetzivus Havaya hainu shetzivus u'tzvokis u'botol Havaya. She'ikor Shem Havaya. V'hainu, what do you mean by Shem Havaya here? B'chinas Atzilus. Kiddush Atzilus Elikus. Again, this is Das Elyon. This is Yichudi Lo. V'ashen b'chinas Havaya Tzvokis u'fishoir nimshach b'biyah. So that's already through the parsa, and that's already Havaya's bottle, secondary to tzvokis. And tzvokis, in its simple meaning, it means host, so there's plurality. So the plurality is bottled to Havaya. That's tzivus Havaya. Or Havaya is nimshach in plurality. That's bitla yesh, that's biyah. That's why, just gonna mute. That's why Shascholas Avodah he bebechinas Havaya tzvokos. So Shascholas Avodah is like B'mei HaNeviim, even though it's historically Moshe comes first, but now, after all, after all, the Seder Avodah is Malamata L'mayla, starting with the Nevi'im and then working back to Johnny. Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah. All right. When did she pass away? Okay. Can I call you back after the shir? Name at 7 o'clock. Yeah. Right now, nothing. Are you? Where are you? Where are you? Okay. So you cover her. You covered her. You pour out any water that's open. You pour out. Any water that's been open is poured out. You open the window. You can close it. Okay, you did that. You covered her. That's it. I'll call you. It's about at 7 o'clock. Bye. Yeah. So it starts off. Ascholas Havaya is Havaya Tzvokis till one reaches, as he's going to explain, the level of Tzivus Havaya, as this B'mei Moishe Shinyan Gili Atzilus, that is a matzav of Atzilus. We don't mean that we leave this world and we divest ourselves of the world and enter Atzilus and the Shamas of Atzilus. It means living in the matzav here, as he's going to explain, a matzav of ishapcha, a matzav of bittul b'mitzias. V'yesh l'ha'yosef. That's where we're up to. Shefesh ben Beis Inyon. The difference between these two Inyon Bavai Tzvokis and Tzivus Havaya. Derech Hefesh ben Beis Ifanim Shebul Milchama. This is analogous to and parallel to the two Ifanim in Milchama. Number one, Lishleil Sholol V'Lovus Boz. One is a cheshbon, and number one, it's a cheshbon, and the cheshbon is to gain booty from the enemy. Now, just to elaborate here, as he spoke about this earlier, this is not a milchama with the meluchas at stake. The melucha is not threatened. But it is, there's a gain here. Just in a simple moshel, there's two kinds of arguments, to make it very simple in everyday life. There's two kinds of arguments. One argument is people respect each other, they have different opinions. So that's an argument, an intellectual argument, where one position is not dismissal or dismissive of the other entirely. You're not dismissing the other person in your argument. So that's one kind of engagement. And then when it's an argument about opinions, etc., there's a cheshbon. It's worth the argument, not worth the argument. And one side can be defeated if the argument is better. Then even the more the godel, can exceed defeat. The point is that it's not engaging the etzem of the person, the rotzen of the person, it's engaging the intellect. It's a cheshbon. And when you win the argument, the one who wins the argument is not dismissing the other person. He won the argument. That's the booty that's gained. That's what he defeated, that's what he conquered, that's what he now has acquired of the other person. But then there's an argument where it's not about the issues. It's an argument about the very existence of the other person. What's really behind it is you cannot tolerate the other person. So whatever he says is intolerable. It's not the discussion really per se. That's the issue, and that's not resolvable. That argument is not resolvable until you can destroy the other person, or virtuously. That's a negative example, but in virtuously, when it's a virtuous melucha, and there's a menagid, that's not tolerable, and that brings out nitzam nitzachem, and that brings out a complete transformation. Then victory is not achieved until the enemy is no longer an enemy; it doesn't exist. Period. And is incorporated. Moreover, is incorporated within the melucha. In the words of the Maamer earlier, rotzen. That's when true rotzen, as opposed to an intellectual argument or a cheshbon argument. That's booty and spoil. Why engage in the war? Because you want to get resources. So there's a whole cheshbon of the value of the war and how much you're going to invest, and when you stop. But if it's not a question of resources, it's a question of rotzen. Meaning the whole rotzen of the melucha is threatened. By the menagid, then there's no cheshbonis, and victory is not. There's no limit on the victory. It's not enough. It's never enough until the enemy is completely it doesn't exist anymore. If it's the kind of enemy that opposes your existence. That's why this whole thing, he says only ben meshayich with the melech. Because only by a melech is every aspect of the Medina an extension of him, and negate to his etzem. Therefore, in halacha, any rebellion against the melech, no matter how insignificant, the halacha is chayiv misa, even to gesture in front of the king when he's talking to you, and you gesture to somebody else, just 1 second, then you get back to him. That's like leading a rebellion. Why? Because you're opposing the etzem meaning of melucha here. If you in front of the king can say 1 second, I'll get back in a second, and you just, actually not even that, you don't even say the words. It's in the words of the Gemara, man de mocha kameh malka, you just make a gesture to somebody else. It means you don't have a melech. It means there's no melech if there's, excuse me, there's no excuse me. It's total, melucha is total. And embraces every detail of the cont and godel, every detail of the melucha, will is why the king will wage war when what's being threatened is a detail of the melucha, in as much that it's his melucha. This is not the booty war, which is a cheshbon. Is this distinction clear? So that engenders hisapche. The only written result of that can be hisapche, not iskafia. Iskafia is enough when the agenda is to gain wealth. You don't have to completely destroy and transform the enemy. Exploit him as much as you want to get. You get his existence is not a problem for you. But when his existence is a problem, because his existence is menaged to your existence, his very existence is benigud. Mitzad yichudi ilah, mitzad das elia, mitzad atzilus. This is not a question of subjugating otherness. There is no otherness. Not exploiting otherness. It's intolerable. And the only victory is complete transformation. That's the true union of Nitzachim. That's the true union of the true Milchama, the ultimate Milchama, which draws on Nitzachim. And now we understand when this kind of Milchama draws on the Etzem HaNefesh. It draws on the Etzem HaNefesh because the whole Etzem HaNefesh is what's being opposed here. Is Eibishter not Eibishter? And you'll move or not. There's no compromise. It's not a game of chess. Even chess at the end, by the way, comes down to the Melech. That's the ultimate. But it's not a question of gain, of using each other, exploitation. It's a question of the etzem kima melucha. So that level, the milchama brings about the union of what? Ishapcha. That the menagid is transformed. So that's what he's saying now. So this is Moshe Rabbeinu versus the Nevi'im. Tzivus Avaya Avay Tzvokos. Yisapcha Yiskafia. And the Mulvadoi, or there is a Metzias, but as long as it's we can use it and exploit it and channel it and tame the beast, it's tolerable. That's Yiskafia. Yisapcha is, Yichud Yilo is, there's no beast. There's only Eibishter. So and that truth has to be revealed. And that means the transformation, not the subjugation. Right? That's the Nekuda that's following. Of course, that's only ultimately Lasid Lava, as you'll talk later in the Maamer, but the Avodah has to be already now in Zman HaGolus. Even though it's really the Tzaddik Gomer was completely transformed in Nefesh HaBahamis. So he goes on to say, so this is the Tuifanim Milchama, so one is to gain booty, or what does it mean, Bishval Nitzachim? So we're saying now, to gain booty is your existence as a Beseder. Yes? But we can use you, we have to use you. And we can use you and have to use your resources. Nitzachim means your metzius is a benigo to the truth of the Malucha. Why? Because you're claiming independence and there isn't. In the Nimshul. Behind the Shebechinas Havai Yitzvokes, that's the lower darge. David of Iskafi Bitl HaYesh. There is a Yesh, but he's bottled. But there's a Yesh. So that means Yesh, not dying Bechinas Halumazeh. There's a level of the Lumazeh Shein Menatzchem, what you say. We don't completely conquer him. We're just using, exploiting, subjugating. Now the Nimshel. There is a Lumazeh, there is a Welt, and that's the experience. We can't shake that. We're locked into Bitl HaYesh. We're in the world of Biyah. We're not Natzilus. That's our reality. There's no blame here. This is the Mitzvah that Eibishter made it. He made it Tzimtzum and the Parsa between Atzilus and Biyah. So what's the best at the outset? Tchilas Haved at least. We have to recognize all comes from God. There's godliness there, so you've got to extract the godliness there that's in it. But the it remains. So that's what in Hashalol V'Habos, that's the booty. That's a war, that's with the cheshbon, namely the Metzias of the Menagid remains, but subjugated, and we'll use it. It's recognizing we come from God. There's godliness in everything. So therefore, everything has to be channeled and used in the service of God, subjugated, the beast tamed, harnessed. But that's not the tachlis. It's not the tachlis because the emes is in the mavada. The tachlis aveda is that the enemy, what's the enemy? The enemy is the ego, the separation, the division, the tzvokos, the multiplicity. Should be completely conquered. That the whole opposition, the existence of something other, He's in this battle. And that's Tzivus Havaya. That's Moshe Rabbeinu's Dargeh. With the Tzvokos, there's a creation. Let's say it's not a creation. But it's Yichudi Ilah. The creation is Bottle Tavaya. Shein kan shum mitzias klal mevad alikus. What's the reality? The reality is alikus. I was talking in terms already of Iskafi and Itzhak to explain, better it wasn't to say in the Maamer itself. That's what, having read ahead, I was able to explain these words. So let's go further. V'hine v'inyan v'avodah kevish mevaychak and blood marash. So now, again, we're seeing all the Rebbeim, so we just recorded for the Tzemach Tzedek. Now the Rebbe Marash, Shebezin on the Melihim, Avedi Diskafi, Avedi Disapchadich, the two Avedis of subjugating or transforming. Shavedi Diskafi, Had Yesh Mitzvah Silumazeh. In Diskafi, there is the Mitzvah Silumazeh, Venim Ratzei Choisoi. We don't conquer it. What he does is the it remains, but he extracts the good. The Rebbe Shabbamis brings out the best in me through the challenges of v'chulu v'chulu. But he's there. That's the Beinani. Shenikra Oved Elikim. The Beinani is called an Oved, one who serves as opposed to a servant. As explained in Tanya, right? A tzaddik is called an eved. It's past tense, invoking the past tense, because that's his mitzias. Done. He has conquered the Yetzer Hara, Nefesh Bahamis. But the Beinani is in constant engagement. Nefesh Bahamis is ever present. And Oved is working with him. There's a him. Lashon Hoive, Shebe'emtza Avodah, he's in the process of Avodah. He's always the problem, and that's the kavanah, to always be confronted with problems, to bring out the best in us, to challenge us. But it's an ongoing process. So what's the Oved Elikim? What's the Beinani? When his contact is as it should be, he has in Yonim Gashmi, and he's enjoying it. He can't escape that. But he directed L'Shem Shemayim as much as he can. And he exercises restraint, doesn't indulge. But the pleasure is the pleasure. He just limits, contains it. So he's elevating, and this is the kavanah. In the Tchilas HaAvodah. It's the kavanah of Golus altogether. This is the booty, this is the gain that is gained through the engagement of the Nefesh Bahamis. And this is a big inyan. The Nitzutzik Dusha that's in the Gashmis, he's elevating it by kosher food and engaging in the world as he should in a kosher way. In a kosher way, she's elevating the sparks. Not the world who reigns the world, Nefesh Bahamis. Nothing has changed fundamentally. It's fundamentally. The huge change is what it is used for. It's a whole different avodah. That's the tzaddik, that's not Oved, that's Eved. He is. It's a description of him rather than what he's engaged in. Chefze, as opposed to Gavra, in the words of Nigla, talking about the person. That's the Gavra, the Chefze, or the engagement, and or the object. So the Beinani is the Chefze. The objects are the way they should be. The Gavra remains the same. Nefesh Bahamis is like the biggest Rosha, the same desires and feelings. But he's controlling. And he's growing through that. There's a great booty, there's a great yield through exercising restraint, tremendous growth and elevating the sparks. But his hapche is, he transforms the Ra to good behind his battle, the Gambri Kol Metzius Ra. The whole existence of opposition, of otherness, which is what the Ra means. Ra means something other than the ego. That's the true Nitzalchen. That's really only ultimately shaykh by the Melech. Because by the Melech, every detail of the Medina ought to be and really is an expression of him. So there's one small part that says, no, me, That's no, the whole Maluch is threatened.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
so in the Ovid versus Eved kind of framework,
Yeah.
seems like by the tzaddik, it's not an avoida. It's almost he's discussing the result.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that's the big shiloh. So what's the avodah of the tzaddik after? The answer is that everything is relative. So there's endless levels of bittul. Endless levels of bittul within bittul. Within Yechudi Ilah. Within bittul b'mitzias. There's you, and there's you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's his avodah, which is a harder avodah, because it's not black and white. Whatever station he is beautiful. And to remain. It's one of the big chidushim of Chassidus in general, of Mashiach, that Mashiach also will come, Lasov et tzadikai b'tshuvta, to make the tzadikim do tshuva. To do tshuva on mitzvahs, to do tshuva on the good things. That's a bigger challenge. And that's an endless avodah. I'll mention again the famous, this mashal is actually brought, I think I mentioned to you, in the complete story of Tishrei, which was published in 1945 or something, under the Rebbe's stewardship as chief editor of Kahos. Groundbreaking English works in those days for American youth, and they remain classics till this day. You know, they're mukha, every word there was passed under the Rebbe's scrutiny. So there's a famous mashal there of the Basi L'Gani, I've told you many times, that explains tshuva ilah, the tshuva of tzaddikim, or tshuva even on mitzvahs, which is the chiddush of Chassidus. Till then, tshuva was for Avedis, you know, sin or don't sin. But he was talking about ishapche, the whole different Aveda. So what's tshuva on mitzvah? So the mashal is it's a story that happened. Basi L'Gani came to a certain place, and in the evening he came to an inn. The innkeeper didn't know that it was him, and received him cordially as he receives all his guests. He was a wonderful man, the innkeeper, and very respectful of everybody. The next day, when people came from near and far to see Basi L'Gani, he realized who the guest was, and he falls at his feet begging for forgiveness, right? You know the story. So Basi L'Gani says, "My good man," and he literally kissed his feet. He picked him up, and he says, "What?" He says, "Rebbe, forgive me, forgive me." He says, "My good man, there's nothing to forgive you for." He said, "Yes, Rebbe, but for the way I received you last night, had I known it was you, it'd be completely different." Did he do anything wrong? No, he received him cordially and respectfully, and not an ill word was exchanged. But had he known it was Basi L'Gani, it's a whole different level. So the tzaddik, his growth in his bittul to the Eibishter, ever deepening, engenders greater and greater degrees of bittul. You know, these are just words for us, but for the tzaddik, it's a whole big avodah. And again, it's more challenging because there's nothing wrong ever. Once you reach the level of Eved, nothing wrong at any level, any station. So along came Chassidus and Mashiach to tell the tzaddik that no, avodah is required there too, revealing the true atmizdik, bligvulness of the Eibishter. It isn't about you, it's about him. So if it's about you, good, so you've arrived, you're a good person. You're a holy person, you're a saintly person. If it's about the kavanah helyona, which is insatiable and infinite and boundless, then there's no end to the avodah. You've never arrived. There's taka shai olamis, there's 310 that we were learning Sunday morning. So once you've earned the shai olamis, there's no more reward to earn. It's taka true. It's taka true. What did Alter Rebbe say? I don't want you Gan Eden Atachten, I don't want you Gan Eden Alien. You, what does that mean? His taka is beyond the reward thing. There's no more reward to get. But there's you and your kavanah, and that's endless. Hashem's desire of us is endless. Yeah. Okay. 4 lines in the bottom. Mashenkin avoid the Sapche Beif Shema. You said this? Yeah. Shazel Iker Inyan Nitzochen Kim Bavidas Tzadikim, as he concludes, and that's the Avodah of the Tzadik. Shatzadik Nikra B'Shem, Nikra Eved Hashem B'Shem Atoya. He himself is an Eved. He's not engaged in Avdus. That's the Beinani. The Beinani is still Be'etzim Magushim. Still enjoys and wants and craves all the pleasures of the world. But he's engaged in holy things. He's not. He's an Oved, not an Eved. But the Tzaddik is an Eved. Because he's achieved this already fundamentally, the shift, when Nefesh Ba'amis is transformed. In Yod Mulvada. Yeah. He's already passed and completed the Milchama. From Bit Layesh to Bit L'Bertzias, which we just pointed out now, itself is endless. The fish in his battle, the Gamri Mitzias Alum is the opposition, no longer. And this is the mile of Moshe and Yeshua, as he said at the beginning of this ois, the union of Tzvakos only emerges, Shem Tzvakos, in the Bizman Nevi'im. That's true. But there's a intermediate stage where the Malach Ani Sar Tzva Hashem Atabasi comes to who? To Yeshua. Why? Because Yeshua already is a whole new stage. Sheyesh bo shinuyim. The Pnei Yeshua, Pnei Levana. So the Gemara brings that the generation, the elders who lived at the time of Yeshua bemoaned how the change. This is Yeshua was aware of this. He wasn't insulted. On the contrary, they said, oy vavoy, that now what has happened, that Yeshua is like the sun, like the moon. Sheyesh bo shinuyim, the moon is in a constant. So what's that? They meant simply is merely a reflection, like the moon reflects the light of the sun. Moshe Rabbeinu is the sun, and Yeshua is merely a reflection of Moshe Rabbeinu. More subtly than the Kudah is that the shinuyim, the moon is now we're learning in Perek Echad. You started Hilchos Kiddush HaChodesh, yeah. So there's shinuyim, there's changes in the moon. It wanes and waxes. Because that's the way it is in the Milchama of the Beinani. Inspired, not inspired. Smaller victories, bigger victories. But Moshe Rabbeinu is like the sun, constantly a state of constant revelation. No changes, the sun. Because there's not ups and downs, not a wrestling ring, there's no war. The Bain in the end, he pins down the enemy. He wins the wrestling match, but it's a lot of give and take till then. But that's not the case of Yehudi Ilah, of the Tzaddik. Because Moshe was the level of Gilui Etzilis Mamish, Tzivis Havaya, where the Tzivos, the host creation, is bottled to, again, multiplicity, is bottled to Havaya. V'lo Havaya Tzvokes. Which he explained before is that in Tzvokes, Havaya, the Eibush that comes and helps, the Beinani win the victory. Without Hashem Oizrai, he won't achieve that victory. But the victory is in his world of, there's a real enemy that I'm contending with here. This is not an illusion. So therefore, the beginning of the Avodah the Zohar says that bread is eaten through a battle, through the sword. It takes a battle to put bread on the table. That's the union of Iskafia. So this is the avodah of using the Nefesh Ba'amis, exploiting it, bringing out the best in me, elevating the sparks. That's the beginning. But the tachlis is Yishapcha Nitzach. Let's go a bit further. Yeah, we're good, we're clear. Yes, folks, good. Everything drawn, revealed in the world is through Torah. Torah is the blueprint, right, that precedes creation. So this, when we're talking about Avodah V'Yid down here, struggling with the Nefesh Bahamis, Beinani and Tzaddik, so this all doesn't start here. It's all in the whole structure, the template of Torah itself. It's also in Torah. Where in Torah? This is the difference between Nigla and Chassidus. In a bigger picture, it's the difference between Torah and Tefillah. Tefillah is a war. It's a ladder, rung by rung, that the person has to ascend in his hisbonenus, in his fighting with his nefesh bahamis, tikkun amidus, as explained at length in Chassidus, what the avodah tefillah is. Like Yaakov says that he conquered with my bow and my arrow. That's his tefillah. Torah you sit and you're learning, and you learn about the world, and you paskin. True learning brings to psak din at the end, and that psak din creates a new reality in the world. But you're distant from it. B'derech shalom, you're in the world of Torah, and you're affecting the world. My soul is within in peace. Torah goes on Torah. That Torah affects a greater redemption, a complete redemption, rather than tefillah. Explain your length of Chassidus. We're saying Torah on the words, so he brought rain and affected, not through tefillah, but through Torah. Why? Because it's a katzilus. It's coming from a state where the world is not a metzius, and so therefore it's a complete and easy, not challenging victory. Whereas tefillah is malamata lamata. Torah is malamata lamata. Torah is mamshich the ratzon Hashem lamata. But tefillah is us down here ascending. That's a war. There's resistance. So that's in general Torah and tefillah. Melchama or shalom. But Torah itself, he started saying it. The difference between the revealed and the inner dimension. The Kal, the Torah Yeshba Kushis Machlekes and Nigla. There's questions, there's difficulties, and there's arguments. There's a whole process before a conclusion is arrived at. What is the halacha? But in Primis HaTorah, according to Zayin, last Taman, there isn't like kushia, no difficulties, the machlekes and the machlekes. He says in Raim, which is a section of the Zayin. That's the true peaceful redemption, not a redemption that comes from a battle, but in a peaceful way. So in other words, he's saying, as he elaborates a bit, in learning Chassidus, a person is just lifted to a higher place, and naturally, in and of itself, the battles that he fought till now, they become petty and embarrassing. Truly, the mind is filled with Chassidus, and that's we learned yesterday. Even though we're holding, we spoke about this yesterday, right? Rabbi Yos, even though we're holding, deep in the battle of Nefesh Bam, is not dislodged in iota, as we learned in Tanya now for the Beinani, at best, Nefesh Bam gets stronger and stronger through constant use of it. So there's no real change in our desires and weaknesses, etc. But the more shaykhas to Pnimius HaTorah, the more it occupies our head. So we're lifted to a place where the battle, it loses its edge. As a chassid, there was a chassid that said that he's a chassid the Alter Rebbe. He would say that he's a chassid out of, what the word gaiva he used, but I forgot the word he used. It's pasnished. I'm a chassid the Alter Rebbe. It's just inappropriate to get involved in this and to be. It's not a battle. It's just lifted. Why? Because here he knows and he appreciates what the emes is and what who is the Rebbe is and what is the Rebbe is saying and what the Rebbe is lifting him to. So this naturally brings a degree of Pada B'Shalom. He fundamentally didn't change, but just lifted. Now you're not lifted because the Rebbe lifts you up. You've got to learn it. This is Chabad. You have to learn it and acquire it and make it your own and think about it and And it's got to be something we don't just file away in our heads. We think about every day, etc. But to some degree, it brings a p'tiyah b'shalom. That's what we learned yesterday, that even in the avodah, a bittul hayesh has to be the yichud yilah as well. The knowledge of it. Even though holding the Baruch Shem, we say Shema Yisrael. All right, to be continued tomorrow.